Alright, so in this video we're checking out the URUAV Flipo95, and this is basically what it looks like. It is a Beta 95X V2 clone. So obviously Beta FPV has moved on from the V2 to the V3, and this is basically the V2 frame. Slightly different carbon frame here, and basically the same motors and electronics. So you have the same 20 amp, 4-in-1, all-in-one flight controller, plus the 1106 4500 kV motors, and I'll just show you that real quick here. They're URUAV branded, but they're 4500 kV just like the V2. I'm not sure if it's like from the same factory or whatever. I couldn't tell you. They do look a little bit different, just the bell. The performance, everything seems about the same. The kV seems about right. Same 3-bladed Gemfan D63 propellers. The all-in-one flight controller is a 20 amp F405. It's GEP-RC target. Has like 6 UARTs. I think it's the same board that's was on the 95X V2, but they've sort of rearranged the way the plugs are soldered onto the board. So the plugs on the Beta FPV one actually go on the other side, I believe, and then the USB port the USB port comes out the top side here, or basically the bottom side of the board, and they flipped it over, so they have the USB port coming out of the bottom here, and they have this like little rubber plug, silicone plug, which is nice. But yeah, it's a micro USB port for the flight controller coming out of the bottom instead of the top, which was a little bit cumbersome to get to. It was like right here behind the battery strap, and where the battery connector came out, like right there. It was sometimes pretty difficult to get to. So I think they basically flipped over the whole board and then had the plug soldered on the other side. So the motor plugs are over here now. So that seems to work out pretty well. And they have this 3D printed part here with little feet to land on. This is analog only. So you get a video transmitter. They have the wrong smart audio, VTX table is incorrect on this one. It says it goes up to 600 milliwatts in beta flight, but it only goes up to 300 milliwatts. And so make sure you change that in the settings when you get it. It does come with a circular polarized 5.8 gigahertz antenna and a whip antenna. It has this little part back here that holds everything, and obviously this is for like a crossfire antenna back here, but this comes with an XM Plus receiver, and that seems to be the only configuration available. So there's no like non-receiver version, and there's no other receiver versions, only the XM Plus receiver version, and it's already included and it's already installed, and it just comes in the box kind of just loose. So I just kind of shoved it in here in front of the battery strap, and then I ran the antennas out the back here, one kind of going up like this, and then one going back here under the VTX antenna, and kind of more like horizontal pointing out the back. Oh, you got some LEDs here in the back here. I think the V2 also came with some LEDs. The camera mounting here is totally different. You don't have the vibration dampening, so you get a little bit more jello with this setup here. Also, there's no change in the camera angle, so it's a fixed angle here. It's like 15 degrees or something like that. You can change the angle of the FPV camera, but that doesn't really help you, because if you go faster and you adjust this camera angle, then your HD camera is just looking at the ground. So you kind of want to keep these the same. Maybe this part could be redesigned so that you can adjust the angle, but this is the way it's been set up. That's why this whole carbon plate here is a little bit different than the 95X V2. And also the way that they did this little cutout here for the sliding end of the camera is kind of different. Now, I flew it with the Hero 7 naked from Flywoo. This case fits in this mount fine. The V2 case from Beta FPV for naked GoPros also fits. The V1 does not fit; it's too big, and the SMO 4K camera does not fit this mount either. You might be able to get it fit in there if you like heat up the TPU and stretch it out, but that might be somewhat difficult. I could not get it in there very easily, but the V2 case from Beta FPV and then this Flywoo case also fits. And I think the GEP-RC case where it's just basically flat in the bottom for a naked GoPro should also fit as well on this mount. Alright, so this is how much it comes in terms of the weight with the GoPro mounts 95 grams. I believe the V2 analog version comes in at like 99 or 100 grams, a little bit more. So I think they may have shaved some weight here off here in the carbon, just maybe a little bit less wires, that kind of stuff. Just overall, also this mounting system here, I think that's extra weight as well. I'll just show you here. This is the 95X V2, but this is the DJI version. You can see how they have this whole dampening system here for the HD camera, but not for the FPV camera. So you get jello in the FPV feed here, but the jello is dampened on the HD camera because of the rubber grommets here, the silicone grommets here, doing the vibration dampening. So I think that's probably where the extra weight is in terms of the weight difference. But you can see the frames identical for the prop guards. You can see exactly the same. So I have a feeling that Beta FPV probably made a ton of these V2 frames. The V3 frame is totally different, and they probably had a whole bunch of these left over and probably just dumped them, for really cheap on the market. That's why the price of this is a little bit lower. It's like $164, plus I think there's probably going to be some coupons. Check the video description. I'll probably add those later. You could get a pretty good price, maybe like $150 in there, somewhere in that ballpark. And, the V2 was, without a receiver, I think was like $185. And then you add like $15 for an XM Plus. So you got to keep in mind this price of $164 includes the XM Plus receiver. So it is it's a better price than the V2 95X V2 was. So if you're still looking for that form factor, because I think it might be discontinued, then this is kind of like the next best thing if you don't want to get the V3. So I flew it with the Beta FPV Force 450. And you can get about 4 minutes of flight time on this battery. And let me just give you the weight of it all together. So I think it was 95. Just the drone. Then the battery comes in at 149.6. And then add the Hero 7 camera plus the power cable I had, because there's no power cable that comes out of this to fit your cameras. So let's put this on here as well. These adapter cables plus the Hero 7. Now we're coming in at 179.78 grams. Oh, and by the way, if you want to know how I powered up my naked GoPro with this particular one, because it doesn't have a power cord coming out of the flight controller, made this little custom cable. Had a video about this one. I'll link that down in the description if you want more details on how to make one of these. Now I looked at the settings, the PID settings in the Betaflight configurator, and it doesn't look like they did anything special. It's like 4.2.5, I believe it's on here, and it just looks like stock settings. So they didn't really do any tuning on this, and I just flew it the way it came out of the box. I kind of knew that it was going to be very loose, because you do need to up your gains on P and D to have this fly better on basically default PIDs. It doesn't really fly that well on default PIDs. So you're gonna see. I've probably been rolling the FPV footage already. You'll see that it's getting pushed around in the wind, and that's because the PIDs aren't high enough. Now, if you're flying this indoors, it's probably not going to be as noticeable, because without any outside forces hitting the drone and pushing it around, it'll feel better than if you fly on these same PIDs outside with the wind kind of pushing it around. And in the conditions where there's no outside forces, it does feel okay. It's not the greatest. It does still feel pretty loose. But I've got a lot of flying experience. I can fly around a lot of those sort of, basically misgivings of the tune. Now, if you want this to be tuned a little better, I would say just up your P gains quite a bit, and maybe up the gains maybe about half as much as the P gains, and just bump it up a little bit at a time. Maybe 5 points, 10 points on P and maybe 5 points in D, and that'll give you like an idea of how that feels. See how that feels. Fly that for a couple batteries, and then keep upping them until you start getting oscillations or hearing like the drone vibrating. Also check your motor temperatures always whenever you're doing PID tuning. Land after maybe 30 seconds. Check the motor temps, make sure they're not hot, especially when you're increasing D gain. So that always you want to make sure you don't burn your motors out when you do that. but mainly you probably want to increase your P gains. That should fix most of the issues. Otherwise, you know, if you're flying it indoors, which most people probably might be doing for something like this, and I don't think people are doing freestyle with this one, it flies really similarly to the 95X V2, which of course makes total sense because it's basically got the same powertrain and weighs about the same. So I wouldn't expect really anything really that much different in terms of the performance. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and I'll show you the HD footage here from the Hero 7. This is basically 4K with Hypersmooth turned on. Nothing special. Yeah, let me know what you guys think of this. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Talk to you guys later.